I wrote my new book, The Art of Caring Leadership, to be both a wake-up call and an invitation for leaders who want to uplift their teams and organizations by putting their people first. Most of us think we care, but caring leadership is about doing, taking action in a way that makes a tangible difference to our teams and our workplaces. Now, more than ever, at any time in history, we need to know what leading with heart actually means for us, for our workplaces, and for the world. The Art of Caring Leadership is a practical guide that will help you decipher what caring leadership means in practice through a framework that uncovers the steps you can take every single day. If your people know you care, not just about what they do, but who they are and can become, they will move mountains. To pre-order your copy of the book, visit theartofcaringleadership.com. On this episode of Leadership with Heart, I speak with Lindy Eichenbaum, President and CEO of Rose Community Foundation, about how she leads with heart. The one thing that really struck me about her is that instead of just jumping right into her role and trying to get results from a money perspective, dollar and cents, she really focused on building up the culture, focusing on the culture, and attracting the best and the brightest talent. Listen as she really reveals her brilliance. Enjoy. Well, hello, everybody. It's Heather, the Leadership with Heart podcast. I'm super excited today to have Lindy Eichenbaum Lent on. Okay, so like many of my guests, they either come referred to me by someone or I see something about them out in the universe. And so in this case, with Lindy, I saw an article about her. And it was written up in a magazine, and I was like, wow, I just loved everything in it. And I thought she'd be a perfect guest for the show. And I'm sure she's going to impart so much greatness, not perfection, but greatness on us. So welcome, Lindy.
Thank you so much, Heather. I'm thrilled to be here.
So where are you anyway in your leadership journey?
I am president and CEO of Rose Community Foundation, which is an almost 26-year-old foundation based in Denver and serving the 7-county Metro Denver region.
And what are like your main focuses of the foundation? I'm curious.
We really work to drive equitable, just, and inclusive communities through values-driven philanthropy. Okay. So we do grant making, but I like to say we do change making because there's lots of tools in our toolbox beyond the dollars that we're able to grant out. And we're really focused on intersectional opportunities that advance justice and equity, inclusion and engagement, and grow resources for the regional good.
That's awesome. Well, we need that so much right now. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. I feel very fortunate, and particularly at a time in our world when there's so much pain and suffering and uncertainty, to be in a place where we have resources to try to make a difference, and where we cultivate a community of donors who also want to invest in our region and in the possibility of what could be. It's definitely a wonderful distraction from the stresses and anxieties that we're all facing at this particular point in time. But it also, we're just so grateful, and as is my team, to have these opportunities to try to make a difference.
Love it. Oh, that's awesome. So I'm curious to know what folks that are there at the foundation who report to you, how would they describe your leadership style?
Well, I hope they'd say that I'm fun and funny. But, I before I joined Rose Community Foundation, I always gravitated toward professional roles that had tremendous needs and expectations, but very little in the way of roadmaps or budgetary resources or staff. And so for most of my career, I've had to create compelling shared visions in which I worked to engage potential partners who could be persuaded to invest their time and their energy and their human and financial resources into advancing a shared goal. And so I come to the foundation with the knowledge and experience that leadership isn't always measured by organizational or budgetary size. It's really about building and leveraging partnerships, both internally and externally, to maximize impact. And so for most of my career, I had to do that in a space with people who didn't report to me. So it's not, and it really never has been about the reporting relationship. It's how do you work with other people, whether they are part of your organization or not, to create a shared vision, and agree to pull the oars in the same direction. And so, now that I am fortunate to be at an organization that has both financial and human resources, it's a gift. It's a gift, but I bring those same lessons in. It's how do you engage, inspire, and learn from the people who you work with, and build together, because we know that when people are part of the process, it creates buy-in and it creates better results. And how do we get the most talented and diverse group of people around the table to make the best decisions possible? Mm-hmm. And so, I've been at the foundation for a little over 3 years, and it's always a journey. The journey never ends. The listening, the learning, the engaging. But I'm so fortunate to work with such an incredible team. The word team is important, because when I came to the foundation, I'll be honest, they refer to themselves as a family. And here's the thing with families. I love my family. But families can be inherently dysfunctional sometimes. Families can be inherently hierarchical. You don't necessarily choose who's in your family, and it's sometimes hard to get rid of people. And so, with that mindset, it had the potential and in fact was breeding some dysfunctional behaviors within the organization. And so I said, no, we're not going to be a family. We're going to be a team. Teams attract the best and the brightest. Teams choose to be together and collaborate. And when something's not working, you can make adjustments to a team, unlike a family. And so, I really think that our team is truly now a team in every sense of the word. And it's been really exciting to be part of that transformation.
Well, I'm sure that's got to be energizing. And like you said, energy, you use energy and inspire and those two words. And I think that sounds like that's when you create that shared vision for other people, it just makes the meaningfulness of the work, the focus of the work, the days that are hard, not be so hard. Just, it makes everything much better. So I can appreciate that focus for you. And I can sense that you probably can move people, with your words and your actions in that regard. So that's awesome.
Well, thank you. I think it's really about equipping people with the tools to also move themselves. When I was hired, like I'm sure many new leaders, my board of trustees immediately wanted us to jump into strategic planning, right? And I insisted that we take a pause and we really focus on organizational culture and organizational health, and building muscle around change, understanding how we react to change, our place in change, how we drive change. That was a gamble. But it so paid off. And our team was able to really co-create our commitments to culture, our aspirational vision. So grateful now. Hindsight's 2020, right? But we've now been working remotely for almost a year because of the pandemic. And what we have found is the strength of our organizational culture that we gained through that process transcends physical proximity now. So I am so grateful that we took that pause, that our board of trustees understood the importance, because it also meant when we got to strategic planning, we were really able to optimize that process. We were able to think bigger and bolder and engage each other. So everyone truly felt part of the process. And I don't think we would have ended up with the same quality of product had we not invested that time and space in organizational culture and health.
So I'm curious to know, where does your drive to lead come from? I can see you're just a really strong communicator. It's probably one of your top strengths. But I'm curious to know where your drive comes from.
I grew up in a community where there were not a lot of examples of women in leadership or women in careers. But I knew it was out there. And even in that absence, I saw people like my own mother, who was an incredibly active volunteer, and always taking on more than any person should. So that kind of appetite and aspiration, was modeled for me in my home. And I just think we are on this earth for such a small moment of time. And why wouldn't we do as much as we can? Here in Colorado, you hear a lot about leave no trace, right? It's an outdoor ethic that when you're exploring the great outdoors, you leave things exactly as you found them. And I think leadership is the opposite. You do leave a trace. You do try to make your mark, and not for yourself, but for the issues you care about, for the causes that are important, for your communities and your stakeholders. You have so little time to make a mark and make a difference. Why wouldn't you use every single possible tool at your disposal, both personal and professional?
The question is no longer, is remote work here to stay? But rather, what does the future of remote work hold? And how can we best prepare for it? As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to take the world by storm, and employees continue to learn how best to work from home, keeping those employees engaged and productive has been an unprecedented challenge for leaders everywhere. At Employee Fanatics, we've been keeping our ears to the ground and intently listening to employees for months to discover what their needs are in this moment, and perhaps more importantly, how those needs will evolve in the coming months. Our new thought paper, Work from Home and Work from the Heart, Reimagining the Future of Remote Work and Employee Engagement, is the culmination of that careful listening process, and will guide you and every leader within your organization to reimagine the ways in which you can use work from home processes to engage and empower every team member. To download your copy, visit employeefanatics.com today.
This is kind of that part in the interview where I'd like to ask the leaders, about a time when you were not just, so amazing like you are, like just so amazing. When you were not the best version of you, you were not necessarily, the leader with heart and the one that focused on uplifting and culture, and maybe you focused on other things that you think right now are less important, but you thought were more important then. I'd love for you to share a specific story, if you could, at the time when you were there, but then what did you do to overcome it? What did you do to move past that?
I don't know that it's one particular story, but there's kind of a amalgamation of similar incidents that were part of my learning journey. Of when you have a challenge with a colleague, and the bottom line lesson that I took away is don't let things linger. But I had to learn, I was always looking for the perfect time to confront, is probably too aggressive of a word, but to have a reality check with a colleague about performance issues. And I would make up excuses for them in my own head. They're going through this personal issue, or this isn't a right time for them for this reason and this reason. And you end up letting things kind of simmer and fester, and they eventually explode. And I've seen this happen on a number of occasions. And so I think part of my learning journey has been there's never the perfect time to deliver bad news or have a challenging conversation. But you really do a disservice to that person and the organization and yourself as a leader if you don't nip things in the bud and confront them. And so I really tried to practice, constructive honesty in real time. That's the key, in real time. And, that creates opportunities to turn problems around, which is, obviously the goal. Or, you deal with it and it doesn't become toxic for the organization as a whole. So really, confronting challenging issues in a real time has been a lesson that I've learned. And it doesn't mean that every time it happens, that's your natural go-to. But I draw back on those past experiences and try to do better going forward.
Yeah. And that's kind of the crux of the show, actually, is this idea of just do better every day. It's not about perfection. Leadership is a journey. It sometimes up, down. And, we just need to be keeping that in check and understanding and giving ourselves self-compassion and grace to not be perfect, but just to get better every day. That's just that ending note is a really powerful message indeed. So I'm curious to know what, for leaders who are listening right now, who might be, at a crossroads or just want some extra motivation to get through this rest of this year, really, what might be a couple pearls of wisdom you would leave them with?
A couple pearls of wisdom. I think I draw inspiration and energy from people. And that can be the people in my family. That can be the people on my team at work. That can be my peer group. That can be experts, nationally. And so it's really about creating the space and the time to listen, because it is so easy for us to get bogged down in the day-to-day minutia, and we're on this hamster wheel and we're constantly going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And it's really hard to find that time to listen to a podcast or watch a TED Talk or read a book or attend a webinar. And yet, when I do that, I find those pearls of wisdom. And sometimes it's not even what the person is saying, but it's what it sparks in my mind. It's I've given myself permission to step back and think. And some of my best ideas have come in those situations. So it's hard. It's hard to carve out that time. But it's important. It's so important. And it's an ongoing aspiration of mine. I don't do it enough, but I think it's critical for all leaders, to refresh themselves, to inspire themselves, to not let amazing opportunities pass them by because they were too busy to notice.
Ooh, thank you. So keep your eyes open, ladies and gents. Make sure that your self-care, so taking care of yourself, that you are skilling up so that you can, know more, have the enlightenment that Lindy just talked about, with kind of the light bulb going off. And you can be in the right place at the right time and meet the right people and do the things you need to have the greatest impact in the world.
Absolutely. For me, leadership is learning, always. It never ends. And I sometimes find that leaders who are struggling, whether it's with motivation or with other things, have forgotten that they're on a learning journey. They're not supposed to have all the answers. And so, you've got to put yourself back out there. Some leaders I've met are most comfortable when they are the expert, when they're the master of their domain. For me, it's different. I'm most invigorated when I'm at the bottom of the learning curve, when there's new issues to tackle, new relationships to build, new systems and structures to understand. And so even if you're not that type of person, if you can find a way to tap into the joy and the excitement of the learning, I think that's a way for leaders to remain dynamic and connected.
I love that. So for those who are listening right now, I'm sure you've gotten some bursts of insight, as Lindy talked about earlier. And please do make sure you share the episode far and wide. And don't forget to write a review. I say this every single week, although I don't see the numbers coming up. So if you are inspired, go write that review on Apple Podcast or wherever you might listen about the value that you received after listening to these different episodes from the leaders who really have their own sense of brilliance inside of them, and they share that with us. So please do that. And Lindy, this has been a treat for me, definitely to make me get motivated in the middle of my day too.
Well, thank you. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss.
I'm sure. I know. I'm sure we can be here on all day. I'm thinking about all the leaders like me who barely have time to do these things, right? So it's like, if I can get a 20 or 30 minute motivation, boop, a burst, then we're good. So I appreciate you giving them that today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks for listening to the Leadership at Heart podcast, too. Be well.